Hello everyone. Today I am going to be doing a quick 5-minute makeup look using a new eyeshadow palette that I purchased from Nars. And this is a part of their Lunar New Year collection for 2024, so it comes in this red and gold packaging. But the color story is actually a cool browns and muted peaches that I think has worked out really, really well on my complexion. And so I've been really happy that I have picked this up. So I will be using this as the basis for a makeup look. In addition, as part of this Lunar New Year collection, they are supposed to be having this Start Me Up color that I'm wearing on my lips right now. That is part of the Nars Powermatte Lipstick line. And I think that those kind of look pretty together, actually. And then they're also going to be having a setting powder in this packaging. And then in addition, they have introduced a few new shades in their Afterglow Sensual Shine lipstick line, and so I picked up one shade in this, which is the color Aragon, so I will be demonstrating that. And then I have a few other lipsticks in this line, and so I will demonstrate those as well. And then I also have a few more products from Nars that I will be incorporating into my 5-minute makeup look. And all of these products actually meet my definition of clean beauty, and they have worked really, really well on my sensitive skin. And in general, I think Nars has been doing a terrific job moving into introducing a lot of new products that really do meet my standards. So I want to do a full video on the entire Nars line very soon, but I thought I would start off by talking about some of these products because there are a lot of Nars products and I wanted to go into these new ones in a little more depth. So first, a little bit of information about me. I'm 59 years old and I have dry and sensitive skin, and I have never had any kind of cosmetic procedures like injections or surgery, and I don't intend to do that. So I am hoping that the makeup and skincare that I use can help me to look a little bit fresher and maybe even a little bit younger. And over the past 3 years, I have tried out more than 1,000 makeup products, so I do have a pretty good basis of comparison for everything that I tried. And one thing that I have found out is that there are certain ingredients that do always irritate my skin, and that those tend to be ingredients that are very commonly associated with irritation for other people. So I just don't talk about products that contain those ingredients on this channel. So Nars is one of those companies that in the past I was not able to tolerate any of their products at all because they all included ingredients that were irritating to my skin. But starting about 2 years ago, in the beginning of 2022, really all of the products that they have released since then have been terrific for me. So they have obviously put a lot of thought into figuring out what ingredients were okay and which ones are not okay in their products, and they really have taken it seriously without really anyone except a very few people being aware that they're actually doing that. And I think that the product quality has remained equivalent, even though they are not using some of those old ingredients. So I am really happy about that. So in terms of the eyeshadow palettes, these eyeshadow palettes do include talc. So if talc is a concern for you, then this would not be the right eyeshadows. But for me, I have not found that talc has been irritating for my eyes at all. Now, the issue with talc is that it can be contaminated with asbestos, and I'm not sure how good they are at testing for it, even in the talc that's being purchased by really upscale, high-end makeup companies. But it also is the case that asbestos is primarily an issue if you breathe it in. And my experience with these Nars palettes is that there really is virtually no fallout, and that I am only needing to use very small amounts of the eyeshadow, so I'm not real concerned about that. But if you are concerned about talc, then this is one of the few products from Nars that you probably will want to avoid. But the main issues in eyeshadows that tend to be problematic for me are either Teflon, and a lot of eyeshadow palettes, even ones sold at Sephora, do still contain Teflon, kind of unbelievably for me at this point. Or aluminum powder tends to be very irritating for my eyes and for many other people. And also synthetic colors can be irritating. And in this case, for the recent Nars eyeshadow palettes, they don't include any of those ingredients. And compared to really any eyeshadow palette that I have used, these have been terrific for me and not caused any irritation at all. And so over the past year or so, Nars has introduced a number of different eyeshadow palettes, and all of them are using basically that same formula, and they all have had ingredient lists that look good to me. The first one that I bought was this quad from the Laguna line, which is kind of a bronzy type of a palette, and I think that this has worked really, really well for me. It only has 4 shades in it, but I think that whenever I wear this, I actually feel like my eyes look really nice. So that makes me kind of inclined to be more interested in the Nars quads. Now, another eyeshadow palette from them that was released about a year ago is this Rising Orgasm palette, which has 9 different shades in it. These are all pinks and golds and browns. And I think that this is pretty too, although I'm not sure if I'm going to get as much use out of that as I have the bronzing one. And then they've released a couple more palettes that look almost to my eye like this Rising Orgasm one. So one was their holiday palette, and then just a couple of weeks ago they introduced another one. And all of those palettes kind of look the same, except for the newer ones actually look like they have deeper colors in them that are more saturated, and so might be more difficult for me to wear. So even though I've been really enthusiastic about the Nars eyeshadow formula, really more than almost any other eyeshadow formula that I've found, I haven't really been motivated to buy any of these other palettes until the Lunar New Year one came on the market. So I don't think that I'm alone in terms of feeling like a lot of these Nars palettes look exactly the same. A lot of other people have said that also. But this palette really has been a breath of fresh air for me because especially since this peach color is really about the same color as what they're calling the Pantone color of the year, which is called Peach Fuzz. And these cool browns, I think, are reminiscent of the colors that were in the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette, and that I've been seeing as a trend in eyeshadows in general for cooler tones. And when I worn it on my face, I think it's looking really nice, that it's bringing out the brown in my hair and what's left of the brown in my hair and the brown in my eyes and the peach in my skin. So I think, at least for me, it's been a really good choice. And it's also been the case that there really haven't been very many good makeup releases that I have been interested in or that have ingredients that I think would be good for me since the beginning of the year. So that made me really kind of excited to buy this one as well. And while $52 is pretty expensive for an eyeshadow quad, I do think the quality of this is really good. And I also suspect that you will be able to get this at a pretty good discount coming up, so you may want to just watch for that. So for Nars, most of their limited edition eyeshadow palettes are around for at least a year and often longer than that. So I'm not sure how long this one will be around, but I don't expect that it's something that's going to sell out right away and that you won't be able to get. So in terms of these shades, they are describing these 4 shades as St. Paul de Vence 1 through 4. And so there's a matte apricot, a matte neutral beige, a matte taupe brown, and a light champagne with a silver sparkle. So I'm not a long-term fan of Nars, and so I'm not sure if we have ever seen any of these shades before. It's possible that maybe they were out in some other palette. They don't seem to be in any of the palettes that are currently on the Nars website. They do have one palette that's supposed to be St. Paul de Vence, but it has different colors in the same apricot type family. And again, I do think it feels very current in terms of the particular color story. So another product that is going to be part of the Lunar New Year collection is going to be a lipstick from the Powermatte formula in the shade that I'm wearing now, which is called Start Me Up, which is a pink shade with a little bit of brown in it that I think does go really nicely with the eyeshadows. And I do like the Powermatte lipsticks a lot. They do hold up very, very well on my lips, really better than any other lipsticks that I have tried. And they go on quite creamy, and then they do dry down, but what I have found is that if I use a little bit of the MAC Prep Plus Prime lip primer before I put them on, then they are much more comfortable for me. And what I've also been doing recently is putting some lip balm over the top of them. So the lip balm that I have found works particularly well is this one from Isamaya. And so I did a whole video on these Isamaya lip balms just a week or 2 ago. So if you're interested, then you can take a look at that, because I think that these lip balms really are terrific. Now I do have a number of different shades in this Power Matte lipstick, and I have found that even though they are listed as having a 6-month shelf life, that so far I've had some for well over a year, and that they have been working perfectly fine for me. So I would not be too daunted by that 6-month usage life. I'm expecting to get a lot more use out of that than 6 months for the ones that I purchased anyway. And then the line also has a setting powder. So this is their light reflecting setting powder, and it doesn't have any talc in it. And I think it does set the makeup to some extent, but I think it's also supposed to be largely light reflecting, but it's not supposed to have flashback if you take pictures with it. So this is a product that I just have this tiny little sample, and I haven't really played with very much. It's more than 10 years old in terms of the formula as far as I can tell. But in terms of the ingredients, it seems fine to me. It has squalane in it, so it's a little bit on the moisturizing side. And I will show you a little bit of this right now. I don't know if you can see what powder looks like very much on camera, but I kind of think it's a pretty powder, and I wouldn't mind getting a larger version of this. And the special Lunar New Year version of this, it's again in the red and gold packaging, and then it will come with a brush, and it's not less expensive than their regular powder. I think it's $2 more, but you do get that brush to go with it. So now let's talk about this 5-minute makeup look. So yesterday I shot some footage of me putting on some makeup, and so I will talk about each of the products that I used, and then I will insert the footage. So the first product that I always put on is eyebrows, and Nars does not really have an eyebrow product that I feel comfortable with. And in addition, when I'm doing really quick makeup looks like this, which is almost all of the time, then I almost always use the Jones Road brow pencil. And the reason for that is because it has little fibers in the pencil, and so because I have eyebrows that are both very light and very sparse, if I'm not using this pencil with fibers in it, then I really need to use both a brow pencil and a brow gel, and that takes quite a bit of time. Whereas this pencil is something that I can put on really fast, and I think it does give a plausible brow look. So unless I'm really looking for a look that's even more natural, but that it's going to take me a lot more time, I just really default to this. And I have this in the color Ash, which I think is supposed to be designed to go with hair that is graying, and I think it does go nicely with my hair. It's more of a cool brown. So next I'm putting on the Nars Eye Brightener. So this comes in a little pot like this. This was released last year, and it is a cream concealer, but it is supposed to brighten the under eye area as well as offering some color correction or coverage. And this came out last year, and I think that the ingredient list looks pretty good to me, and it has not irritated my skin at all. I think it's very easy to put on in terms of how easily it goes on and how easily it blends in. And so the question is whether or not I think it's a good idea to have my under eyes brightened or not. Usually I do use a color corrector, like a darker peach color than this, whereas this is actually a lighter color than my actual skin. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would be interested in hearing your opinion on that. But in any case, other than that, I think that this is a really nice product. And then in terms of foundation, the only foundation that Nars offers that I feel comfortable with is the Nars Light Reflecting Foundation. This was introduced in 2022. It doesn't have any silicone in it. It doesn't have ingredients in it that I consider to be problematic. There's no fragrance. There's no sunscreen. It does offer medium coverage, and so that is more coverage than I typically use in a foundation. I usually tend to find that, especially if a foundation does not have silicone in it, that if it's a medium coverage, that it does tend to get into my wrinkles and make them look worse. And in this case, I feel like this foundation is not as bad for that as many foundations that are out there, so it's really probably just making my wrinkles look a little bit worse if I use it at full strength out of the bottle, but it's not nearly as much of an issue as many foundations. So if you are really looking for a medium coverage foundation, then this would be one that I would definitely consider, and it hasn't caused any irritation to my skin, and I do think it's pleasant to put on. Now, what I have found recently is that if I have a foundation that is, especially if it doesn't have silicone in it, that has more coverage than I like, then if I mix it with a little bit of moisturizer, that seems to help a lot, and that I can get some of the coverage from the foundation as if it's a light coverage foundation, but without it emphasizing my wrinkles. So what I did in this video footage today was to mix it with a little bit of this moisturizer. Usually I've been using this one from the outset, which is called Nourishing Squalane Daily Moisturizer, to mix with my foundations, and I found that there have been several so far that I feel like have worked really, really well for me. So now I'm getting some new life out of the old foundations that I really never used very much because I never really needed that much coverage. So what I have found is that if I put on the foundation like that and then I just let it sit for maybe 15 minutes or so, that it all really sinks into my skin and that it generally looks pretty nice without my needing to put much powder on it. But today what I decided to do is to use a little bit of my Jones Road powder, and in particular the version that has a pink color. And the reason for that is, well, first of all, the Jones Road powder does tend to be a good oil absorbing powder. So if I have a foundation that is looking a little bit too oily and a little bit too sticky, then if I put just a tiny little bit of this down on top of it, then that tends to give it a really natural looking and easy finish without my needing to do anything else to it. And I think that this has worked particularly well for the Jones Road What the Foundation, which does otherwise have a really sticky and oily type feeling to it. It's worked really well for my Makeup by Mario foundation, and really with all the times that I'm mixing foundation with moisturizer, it's worked well for that too. The other thing about this particular powder is that I think that this pink powder really looks nice all the time. It really just gives my face a little bit more life. So I never really thought of myself as having sallow skin before, but I do feel like just adding a little bit of overall pink color does make me look a little bit younger and a little bit fresher and a little bit healthier. And I think that's particularly the case with this foundation because I made a mistake and I purchased one that I think is not quite the right shade for me. So this is Salzberg, and I think it's just a little too yellow. It's supposed to be a warm, light color, and I think it's a little dark, and it's especially a little yellow. So if I put a little bit of pink powder on top of it, then it starts to give me back the peach that I think that my complexion is more naturally. So next I'm using my Haus Labs concealer on my eyelids, and I haven't really liked this concealer very much on the rest of my face. I do feel like it exacerbates the look of my wrinkles, but I do like it as an eyelid primer, and I don't feel like it has irritated my eyes at all. Now, in terms of blush, another thing that I picked up recently during the end of year sales from Nars is a blush palette called Foreplay, and this is still available on the Nars website too. And this has 4 colors of blush, and it's really based around their Orgasm shade. So this shade up here is their Orgasm, and then these down here are 2 variations. One is a bright color, which is Orgasm X, and then there's one that's more of a bronzy color that's also supposed to be related to Orgasm. And then at the top here, there's a gold shade. And so I feel like these are really pretty shades and that they kind of coordinate with the peach in the eyeshadows. There's a little bit of talc in this, but there's not very much at all. And I don't think that I really need to put very much on to get a really pretty look, but it does have a little bit of a shimmer in it, which I think is fine. I don't think this is as good as the RMS blushes, so if you're trying to choose, I would definitely go for those RMS blushes. But I do think it's a pretty palette, and that if you can especially get a good deal on it, then it might be worth considering. So one other thing that I will say is that right before the holidays, I did a full video on this particular blush palette, which was their holiday blush palette. And even though it looks like it's different colors than this blush palette, I really kind of feel like if you have one Nars palette, you really don't need to buy another blush palette. That even though this one has shades that look like they're different, when they actually got on my skin, I'm not sure that they really look any different at all in terms of the look that I could have gotten from the holiday palette. But I do feel like this powder blush does hold up pretty well on my skin, and I do think it looks really pretty. And by the way, this shade of Orgasm in this palette is a totally different formula than the one that they are continuing to sell in terms of their individual powder blush. So that one is all talc, and it feels really different to me. It feels like it's a lot more soft, and it kind of goes on quite a bit differently, so it really depends on what you're looking for and if you like a talc formula. And so now let's talk about the eyeshadow palette. And on the website, they have a photo of how they would suggest maybe putting it on. And they're only using 3 of the colors. They aren't even demonstrating that light color. And what they're basically just suggesting is using this peach color all over the lids, using this brown color as an eyeliner, and then using this shimmer shade as just a little tiny bit of sparkle on the inner corner. So I tried that, and I thought it looked kind of on the plain side, and I don't think it really gave my eyes the dimension that I've been used to using. So I decided to do it a little bit differently, and I think I like it better the way that I've been doing it, although if I'm looking for a more basic and kind of invisible look, then I might do it the way that they suggest. So what I did for this is to put the beige one all over my eyelids, including all the way up to my eyebrows. So I think that this particular shade is just a little bit darker than my natural skin tone, and so I think that that's fine in terms of creating a base for eyeshadows. And then I put this peach color all over my eyelids, but then I took the matte brown shade and I put this on the outer corners of my eyes on both sides of my face so that it would give it a little bit more dimension. So when I have looked at how most makeup artists seem to suggest putting makeup on hooded eyes, what they do seem to be suggesting is using a darker color on the outer corners, and I do think that that works well for me. So that is what I have done here. And then I've also used that darker matte shade with an eyeliner brush on the tops and then a little bit on underneath my eyes as well, just as a little bit of eyelining right around along the lashes. And then I've taken some of this shimmery shade and just put it sort of just a really light layer over the entire top of the look. And of course I used a blending brush to blend this all together. So I am not an expert at putting on eyeshadows, and I am sure that other people may have better ideas than I do, but I think that if I can do an eyeshadow look that looks this nice really fast within a minute or so, then I am really happy, and I think this is a really good palette for me. And I do think that using a basic palette like this that only has 4 colors, you get to know it really well, and then you can use it really fast, and then that makes me more likely to use it on a regular basis than a palette that I feel like I'm going to have to figure out how to use it from scratch for that day. That takes way too much time in my day usually. And I did find that it went much faster today than it did yesterday when I first got the palette. So I am showing you both days so you get a better sense of what it actually might be like to use this palette. And then because this look is so relying on brown type colors, I decided to for sure use my Westman Atelier mascara, which has a brown shade to it. And this is actually a true brown. It's not just a brown black. And I do think it's really pretty on me. And I have said a number of times on this channel that I am afraid of getting an eye infection from one of these natural mascaras because that happened to me one time, and so that I am really trying to only use mascaras for a month or two and then to throw them away. I'm going to have to be really hard pressed to throw out this Westman Atelier mascara. So it was $45, I think, which is really, really expensive and kind of ridiculous. But the more that I use it, the more that I like it, both in terms of how well it goes on, in terms of it being less irritating for my eyes than even most of the mascaras that I use, and in terms of this brown color. And so now I have some footage of me putting on the Nars Sensual Shine lipstick in the color Aragon. And I think that this is not a bad color. It's kind of a brick red, but it's a little bit more muted, and I think it's quite pretty, actually. Now, in terms of the formula of this lipstick, I think that they really hit it out of the park with their Power Matte lipsticks and with their Power Matte lip pencils, which are really more like a lip crayon. Now, with this Sensual Shine lipstick formula, I think that this is more on the ordinary side. I think it's an okay formula, but I don't think it's necessarily a lot better than many of the other lipsticks that are out there, and that you can probably find a brand that has better products than this one. I think the real issue with this is that all of the lipsticks that they're creating, they're pretty bright colors, and they're obviously noticeable on the lips, and I think if they were going to do that, they should have probably made a lipstick formula that was a little bit more like sticky, because what this one tends to do is it tends to get kind of messy, and I can see little bits of the lipstick, like, you know, off of my actual lips onto the skin, and then I have to address a little bit. So I think that they should have probably either gone for really neutral color lipsticks, or they should have made a formula that was a little bit different. But it does feel really good on my lips. It does taste good to me. It doesn't have a flavor in it that is objectionable, or a scent that's objectionable. It hasn't irritated my lips at all, and I've really enjoyed wearing it, and I think that they are pretty. They're just not quite perfect in terms of how well they behave as far as I'm concerned. Now, one other thing that I do want to warn you about is that I think it's very easy to get confused between the Nars Afterglow Sensual Shine lipsticks, which are like a lip balm, and then the Nars Afterglow lip balms, which look like this. So it's a different container, but I think it's still very confusing. And I think the reason that it's important not to get confused is because these lip balms, they have octinoxate in it. It's an older formula, and I have found that for sure this does irritate my lips. So if you are reactive to octinoxate, which is a sunscreen, a chemical sunscreen, like I am, then you definitely want to avoid these. And then another thing to know about Nars lipsticks in general, I think, is that when you look at their website or at the photos on the Sephora site, you really can't rely on any of those photos to try to get a sense of what those lipsticks are like, because their photos are really taken in very bad light. And so it's almost impossible to choose based on that information. Now, sometimes they do post pictures or videos on their Instagram account, and sometimes that is more informative. So for the new shades of the Nars Sensual Shine lipsticks, I did take some stills from the Instagram account, and so I'll show you those, and you can take a look at them and you can read the descriptions. And I have just 4 of these shades. 3 of them are older, and then I have the new one. And so I will show you each of these on my lips so you can get an idea of what at least these 4 shades look like. Another thing that I had happen with this new Aragon shade is that it seemed to be a little bit grainy when I first started using it. So I think that that is because I received it during the winter and it was outside at least briefly in the cold weather. It wasn't like 0 degrees like it is now, but I think it might have been 20 or 25 degrees. And I'm not sure it was outside all that long, but it was outside more than a minute or 2, I think. So my experience living here in the upper Midwest is that lipsticks and also other kinds of stick products like the Westman Atelier highlighter stick, that those products do not necessarily hold up all that well in the cold weather. And I've had a number of them get really zapped. So probably what I should do is just stop ordering products that are in that stick form until it gets warm outside, unless I can go to Sephora and buy them, because they do tend to get ruined a lot. So in terms of these lipstick shades, the first one is Orgasm, and so that is a peachy pink with a little bit of a gold shimmer. And as I say, I do really like the color Orgasm as a blush still, but I think that maybe as a lipstick, I'm not liking it quite as much. It looks a little bit on the dated side maybe, but I still think it's very pretty, and maybe it's especially pretty with this eyeshadow look. And then the next one that I have is called Truth or Dare, and that is a much brighter coral color. So I think with all of these brighter lipstick colors, if this were a formula that I didn't need to worry quite as much, that it was going to get a little bit messy looking, that I would feel more comfortable with it. But I do think it's a pretty color. And then the next one is Voltage, which they describe as a vivid red, and I purchased that because I thought that this would be a good try in terms of my ongoing quest to find a red lipstick that actually looks good on me. And I actually think that something that's this light and that is a little bit on the transparent side, that it does go a long way into making the red lipstick more wearable with my low contrast coloring. But on the other hand, again, I think if this were a little bit less messy, that I would be doing better with it. And then the final one is Aragon, which is my new lipstick, and I think that one's actually pretty. I might like that one the most of all four of those. So thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of the video. And if you have ever tried any Nars products, then please let me know what you thought of them, because I'm really interested in whether other people feel as good about these products as I do, even if they do have sensitive skin. In addition, I hope that if you have not subscribed yet to this channel, that you will go ahead and do that. I'm hoping that by the time you see this video, I will either be right at 1,000 subscribers or almost there. So if you can help me out with that, that would be great. And Coco and I love you very much, and I hope you're having a good winter. Thanks you very much for watching. Goodbye.